Alright guys, welcome to my live session. What should I say? This session brought to you by welcome to my live sesh where we talk about the things that matter. That's all we talk about here, are the things that matter. For those of you who don't know me, I always like to do a kind of a quick intro. Can I tell if my voice isn't going well here? I don't know. I like to do a quick intro. It's kind of hard to talk with this. I really don't like talking with this thing on, but maybe it'll be okay this time. I don't know. That in 2020, I put everything into Bitcoin. So I came to New York City, kind of on the wings of a storm. My body had been, or my job had been stressing me out. I was breaking my body down, and I finally was starting, willing to let go of it. And I met a guy named Bitcoin Bill about a month after I moved to New York, and he convinced me with a silly story. He said, I have a dream that Bitcoin goes to $100,000. He's like, I know it's going to happen. I can tell I'm from the future. And I was so beaten down at that point, I just thought, yeah, why not? You know, I could use a little magic in my life. You could call it kind of like I don't know, a false call to adventure. Or maybe it was the right call to adventure. I don't know. But I pulled out all my retirement accounts. I refied my condo, plowed all that into Bitcoin, about $600,000 of all my money. $600,000. It's a lot of money. And then I triple leveraged it at the behest of Bitcoin Bill. And yeah, we wrote it up. It was amazing. I got to about $3.5 million of Bitcoin, about 50 Bitcoin free and clear. And of course, in May of 2021, it crashed badly from 65,000 to below 30,000. And I should have been wiped out, but the Ethereum network was so backed up that it couldn't liquidate me fast enough. And by the time the network caught back up to me, Bitcoin had recovered, and I was able to recover about maybe, I don't know, 20 to 30% of my original investment. And, you know, what do you do in that situation? Of course, you try to make it back. Obviously, that's the right move. And so I made a bunch of trades going up and down, up and down. Oh, this is the one. No, you know, freaking out. It was definitely a shit show. And in the summer of 2022, I was right around $200,000 left, and someone scammed me out of $60,000. And it was at that point that I said, okay, all right, you know, I think I've had enough. I think I need to stop. I think I have a problem here. And I've just been rebuilding ever since. Listening to Jordan Peterson, cleaning my room, what I would call repairing my narrative. And that's what we'll be talking about today. Your narrative. What is your narrative? Why is it so important? What is this thing? We've been talking about the hero's journey and how that narrative has been echoed across multiple cultures, across all generations. It's a timeless story, and it's one of the only grand narratives that we have. So, yeah, we spoke about that, and today we're going to talk a bit about a little more practical, like how do you initiate this in your life? How would you pursue the hero story? What does that look like? So that's what we'll be doing. All right, so let's get started here. I'm going to start with a clip. Here you go.
You work with a lot of fighters. For how many of them is it about money, and for how many is it about the pure love of fighting?
Well, the guys that get into it for the right reason are the guys who get into it for greatness, because you want to be the fucking best, right? And when you're in it for that reason, right, you love it and you want to be looked at as the best ever, and you have the talent, the money happens, right? Then you have other guys who get in. Believe me, I've dealt with fighters who just wanted to be famous and just wanted to make money. You know what I mean? And it's, you know, listen, it is what it is. It's your life, and you live it the way that you want, and do your thing. But the ones that are beloved are the guys who really want to be fucking great, and they're the ones that are remembered. And I mean, when you
All right. So here we have Dana White talking about two different kinds of fighters, right? What's the difference? Is the difference talent? Is it one's taller than the other, someone was born in another place. No, it sounds like there's a difference in their motivation. He says some just want it for the money and the fame, some want it for greatness. And he's saying that's the difference. Just their motivation. Obviously, talent has to be there, is what he said. And let's take a look at a couple quotes. I love quotes. So yeah, this is the question of motivation. And here, wouldn't you know it, Nietzsche agrees with Dana White. How about that? If you have the right why, how doesn't matter. How, you'll do whatever it takes if you have the right why. So it's a question of motivation. And also in Dana White's little monologue there, he made some observations about reality, how the universe works. I don't know if you caught that. He said if you pursue greatness and you have the talent, if this is your calling, shall we say, then the money comes. So this is sort of like a hierarchy of motivation. What should you value first, greatness or money? And he's saying you should value greatness. It kind of reminds me of another quote from another man you may have heard of. Seek first greatness, and all the other things will come. Yeah, you may have heard of this guy. And so this was kind of fun. We have back-to-back quotes here, side by side, with Nietzsche and Jesus. Not too often that you see that, so hopefully you got your money's worth already with that. What is so important about motivation? Why is it such a mysterious thing? Why is it so focused on? I guess it shows your priority of values. If you're pursuing money, money is your highest value. If you're pursuing greatness, then greatness is your highest value. Why is it so important, the right motivation? I mean, don't we decide what that motivation is? Aren't we the ones that control? I mean, why should it matter if I'm pursuing $1 million or if I'm pursuing greatness? Isn't it just a matter of scale? Like $500,000 will inspire me so much, whereas $1 million will inspire me even more, or $1 billion inspires me even more. Why should it matter what the motivation is? Don't I get to choose that? I think the answer is no. We don't get to choose that. None of us really choose what interests us. Things call to us. And then we discover what those things are. That's why they call it a calling. That it calls to us. We don't call to it, it calls to us. And there's probably some kind of reciprocal feedback loop a little bit, but it's kind of like changing your favorite color. Like, what's your favorite color? Blue? Okay, make it red. Can't do it. It's part of the thrownness, I guess you could say, of life. We are a mystery to ourselves, you know. And that's like that. Well, the higher up that motivation tree you go, like some motivations are quite easy. I'm getting out of bed so I can go to work. That's a quick, easy motivation. Going to work so I can make some money. There's a simple connection. I make money so I can pay my rent, so I can survive, so I won't starve, so I won't be disgraced. Those are simple surface ones. But then if you go higher up, it's like, well, why do you want to do a good job at work? Maybe I can get promoted, or is that the only reason? Or why don't I just resort to crime? Or, well, I guess there's punishment there. Why do I want to take care of myself at all? So I can experience less pain, I guess. Why wouldn't I just lie and cheat my way so that I can experience less pain? Because, the higher up that tree you go, it's a little bit harder to figure out. Why do I want to take care of my family? What does it mean for me to take care of my family? Why do I love my family? It's hard to know why that is. And this is the role of religion. This is why we have ancient stories, because we're a mystery to ourselves. And we are cautioned time and again from all sorts of wisdom traditions that you got to be really careful what you aim for. Careful how you choose your motivations. It's almost like they stack the motivations. There's the obvious, shiny sports car, beautiful woman, or beautiful man. prestigious job, powerful, controlling, right? But those seem to be slightly lower motivations, and you can go higher than that. There's higher, and this is what religion tells us. What are our highest motivations? Shouldn't we know that? I mean, we're the ones that have the motivations. Apparently not. Life is one of those weird things, and so that's why we're exploring these different stories that we've been telling each other over and over again. Maybe in this way we can discover what our highest motivation is, because what's at stake? Well, according to Dana White, there's a lot at stake. Your success is at stake. How you're remembered. You can think about why that's important, but it just seems to be important. So let's talk about your highest motivation. What does that mean exactly? How do you find that? Well, I mean, there's a couple ways you can think about it. But I think there's like sort of characteristics of, there's sort of like a meta highest motivation, where it's whatever feeling that it brings you. So for example, the feeling of getting a lot of money gives you a certain feeling, maybe a euphoria. It's more about self. And then taking care of your family brings you a certain feeling, like you think about how you'll be respected as the man, and your family will respect you, and your kids will grow up strong. And that's kind of like you're saving your family. That's kind of like being a hero. So there's the destiny. There's this, your highest motivation could be driven by some kind of moral nobility, a nobleness to that pursuit. And that's pretty recommended. If we go back to this quote, right, you're seeking first the kingdom, which is sort of like your highest values. In the hero story, what I think the highest, and it sort of combines a bunch of different motivations, but in the hero story, there's a sense of destiny, that this hero is called, and that it was almost preordained. So there's a sense that we're born with a purpose, and that purpose comes from above. I don't think there's a higher motivation than that. I believe that the prophetic motivation, if you can somehow convince yourself to believe it, I think that would give you the highest resolve if you're chosen by God to do something. And of course we see this in the negative way all the time, how people die for their religion. You can think of maybe suicide bombers, or people that do all sorts of really painful things to themselves and other people in the name of a religion. The religious motivation is probably the highest. You don't think you get any higher than that. So then you gotta choose your religion carefully, I guess. So, but I could boil that down to the concept of destiny. And there's two ways to think about destiny. You can think about... Yes, two ways you can think about destiny. You can think about destiny by prediction. So your name was written, there's a prophecy, destiny by prophecy, I guess you could say, where it was written in the stars, and then you're the fulfillment of all these prophecies, just like Paul Atreides in Dune. And that would be a shot to the system, wouldn't it, if you realize that you were somehow written about thousands of years before you were born, and you were the fulfillment of a number of prophecies where you accomplish a noble task, such as, saving the people, saving your world. That would be a very, very high motivation. You could see that's a very high level of greatness. If you can convince yourself of that, somehow that's revealed to you, you can see that, then that's it. You found something amazing. For us modern people, I think it's a bit easier to think about a different kind of destiny, and that's what I call a destiny by design. So you could think that you don't necessarily need to tell the future, but you could say that a hammer has a destiny. And then you could also say, well, a nail has a destiny. And those two destinies are probably pretty different. You can imagine if the roles were reversed. Think of trying to to you can't even use the word hammer something in with a nail. You're taking this little nail and you're trying to drive something into a piece of wood. You're trying to drive a hammer into a piece of wood with a nail. You can think of how silly that is. You could say, in some sense, well, you're perverting their destinies. You're missing their destiny. That they're not fulfilling their purpose. A hammer is, if you personify a hammer, you could think a hammer will be okay. You could use it as a prop to prop up a table. And the hammer will be maybe a little bit sad doing that. But if a hammer is swinging away, that's probably a pretty happy hammer. Right? He's fulfilling his purpose. And a nail the same way. If a nail is being driven into wood and is holding a structure together by its strength, and it has this pointy end that it can drive in there and a flat head that can be hit easily, you could say that the nail is fulfilling its destiny. So then the question becomes, well, what's your destiny? Or what's our destiny? And that's where I was going with looking at our physiology and what unlocks our physiology, looking at our design and trying to determine, based on our design, what could be our destiny. So that's the question. What is our destiny? How do we discover this? And it's important because if we can internalize a personal sense of destiny, then that will unlock our motivational systems, which you talked about, that your dopamine is released in proportion to the value of the goal that you're pursuing. So your motivation actually matters a lot. And what Dana White was saying was that money is a motivation that it won't really sustain your system. It's not sustaining. You're not going to get the constant dopamine release in the way that you want. It's going to be disappointing in the end. So when you're thinking about a destiny, I recommend you do something that's noble. Something that makes the world a better place, that saves the world in some way. And you can be a little bit flexible in how you think about what saving the world means. A great plumber saves the world. I mean, if you've ever had a plumbing issue and you find a great plumber, I tell you, man, he saves your world. He saves you. That guy saves you. I have this iron that I bought for $70. It's a Rowenta iron. I tell you, man, every time I pull that iron out, I get a little excited. Every time I have a wrinkly shirt, I'm like, ooh, I get to use my iron. Iron's beautiful. It steams perfectly. I take really good care of it. That saves my world a little bit. Huh? You know, to be honest, I have a spiritual experience every time I touch that iron. So you want to have a sense of nobility, and then you want to have a sense of purpose, of destiny by design. So what is calling you forward? I like to think of it as where are you the hero? Where do you feel your greatness is? And it's difficult to describe, but it's kind of like almost like you're displaying. It's like you feel like like a conqueror, like a lord, some kind of nobility riding in. And it takes work to find that. So that's the importance of motivation and the shape of the motivation that will unlock us to the fullest. What's beautiful about discovering your destiny, and it's a process. You may not be able to hit the top, but you can kind of work your way into it, which we'll talk about. But the beautiful thing about finding your destiny is that it really changes how you look at life, and it assigns new values to what you would consider pleasurable versus painful. And what it also does is it supercharges your life. It floods your life with those good hormones, those good neurotransmitters, with the dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. How does it do that? Well, the way we're constructed is we're constructed of mini motivations. You could think of them as mini narratives, because a motivation is a narrative. If you have this dream, a dream is a narrative. You have a dream of becoming a lawyer, for example. You've played the cinematic sequence in your head. Maybe you picture wearing this really this really fancy, beautiful suit, perfectly fitted, powerful looking. You got this designer leather briefcase. You drive your Rolls Royce into work or Mercedes, whatever it is. You have this whole cinema, and you think about all the feelings that you feel, and this is what fuels your motivation. And so now, when you are writing out that paper for one of your classes, that image of the lawyer now fuels your fingers to type that paper. These mini tasks become charged. An example that I like to use would be Navy SEAL. Think of someone trying to become a Navy SEAL, how difficult that is. So, you think of just a normal everyday person versus someone trying to become a Navy SEAL. They're both on the surface maybe doing a lot of the same things. They're getting up in the morning, they're getting showered, they're shopping for food, they're cooking their meal, they're eating their meal. A lot of those mini tasks are the same, but what's going on internally in terms of their motivational systems, probably night and day difference. The Navy SEAL wakes up at a very specific time, or the trainee, the guy who wants to become a Navy SEAL, he wakes up at a very specific time, I'll bet, maybe 5 in the morning. He has a very regimented schedule. He's got all these different mini tasks. That on the surface seem mundane, but they are being orchestrated and fueled by a master task, and that is becoming a Navy SEAL. So now when they do these really kind of lame things, you could say, like grocery shopping, cooking, even eating, everything is done with a purpose. And whenever they perform those tasks in the way that they planned out, they get a small hit of dopamine because they feel that their perception is, if I do it this way, I'm getting a little bit closer towards that goal of becoming a Navy SEAL. Now, another thing I should say is that you have the right goal when it scares you. Why do I say that? So if we're thinking about destiny by design, you could think, well, under what conditions do we release the most amount of those positive neurotransmitters, those rewarding neurotransmitters? What gives the biggest dopamine release, the biggest serotonin, the biggest oxytocin release? Because if we can determine what are the conditions under which the largest portion is unlocked for the longest amount of time, then that probably indicates that we were destined by design to do those things. And if we go against our destiny, all that means is we're getting a lower reward. It's just a mechanism. So they've actually tested this. This is sort of cool. They've tested a number of ways, a number of different positive sensations to see which one is the most pleasurable. And they set up different stimulants in the brain. I guess they hook up different magnets or whatever, and they can stimulate areas of the brain, and they give people a choice of which areas they want to stimulate. And there was a number of choices. One of them was sexual stimulation, intoxication. There's something called a voluntary approach response. There's a number of different sensations that they could, what they call bar press. They press different bars. Like if you press this bar, you get the sexual stim. If you know. So what was the most motivating, you could say? Well, the most pleasurable feeling, I guess by far, one that they would continually press over and over again, was this thing called voluntary exploration. So it's voluntary approach in the face of fear. And the key is voluntary. They've observed this in rats, where when rats encounter some kind of danger, the ones that approach that danger in an intelligent way, they start to tail flick, and the tail flick is some indication that there's something happening in a very specific part of the brain called the midline thalamus, that when it gets stimulated, I think it hooks into the dopamine and it floods the system with dopamine. And the feeling is generally anticipation and mild frustration. So basically, you can think of it as the expectation of something positive combined with an obstacle that must be overcome. So that would mean that the goal that we should have, the motivation that we should seek, should be one where we expect a big reward. We expect something to happen. maybe something good, something that we have to overcome, and it has to be involve fear. It has to be something so difficult that it makes us a little afraid. And there's not much difference between being afraid and being excited. Those excitement must contain an element of fear. It's just necessarily that way. Some kind of unknown factor that you're not sure of, and that creates fear, but it can be in a positive way. So we are designed to have a motivation. Just according to the design, according to these studies, we're designed to approach something that feels a little dangerous, a little scary, but we sense that it's deeply worthwhile, but we also sense that it's going to be difficult. We're going to encounter barriers. We're going to get frustrated. If you want the best feeling of your life, and I mean that literally, if you want the best feeling of your life, you must find that motivation, that goal that's both worthwhile and intimidating. That's how you unlock the fullness of your system. And so that's very similar to a Navy SEAL. I mean, that people have died during that test. I mean, it's insane, like what's happened. And people still do it. It's incredible. The thirst for the human spirit for adventure and to be tested. It's almost like a Judgment Day motif. That if you pass the test, this judgment from on high, then now you are worthy. And then you can go and you are now a hero. A Navy SEAL is basically a hero that saves the world. Or at least hopefully that's the motivation for anyone who does that test. So the Navy SEAL is a really instructive example of the right kind of goal and what the benefits are of that goal. Every corner of your life now becomes supercharged with meaning because the difficulty of becoming a Navy SEAL is so encompassing that you can't take any shortcuts. You know, there's no hiding from that Navy SEAL test. If there's a weakness, they're going to find it. So that's what I would call. So basically, the Navy SEAL is this orchestrator. It's this anchor around which all other tasks are linked to, and the character of those tasks, the nature of those tasks, are shaped by this master task, which is the Navy SEAL test that's approaching. Another great thing about this Navy SEAL example is you encounter something I like to call pain inversion. I probably don't need a fancy term for it, but pain inversion, and that's when the difficulty of the task now becomes a feature. Most of the time we go through life, we're trying to avoid pain. Or generally, like, we crave that pleasurable feeling, that comfort, and then everyone says, oh, you got to get out of your comfort zone. Well, the reason is because when you do that, you engage that midline thalamus area, the nucleus. It's called the nucleus reunion. And this thing is what really, it taps into that motivational system, and it fills you with that pleasurable, anticipatory, excitable sensation that we crave so much. So with the Navy SEAL example, it's like part of the reason why this guy, just a hypothetical guy, part of the reason why he's doing that test is because it's hard. Because it's really difficult, and by going through a test like that, he will come out stronger. But also, he will have proved his worth, that he is tougher than other guys. That where others have failed, he has succeeded. This is a hero narrative. Now, if he can link that Navy SEAL training or Navy SEAL testing to an even higher narrative, now it's like, I feel that I'm called by God to do this. I feel that I've been designed to do this. And this is why I was put on earth. The why, the higher purpose, the shape of reality, that consciousness is the shape of reality. The higher up that motivational tree you can go, that you can make those links, the more good feelings that you're flooded with, especially with those mundane, normally pretty boring tasks. I know for me, one thing I kind of enjoy doing, this could also just be me because I'm like Virgo rising. I kind of enjoy chores in general. I'm one of those weird people. But like when I pay my bills, because of everything that happened with Bitcoin, when I set aside time to responsibly, methodically consider each bill, each expense, and put my money, arrange it in the way that's in the best way possible, I feel like I'm fulfilling kind of a hero story, a redemption arc. And so I definitely get some dopamine. I look forward, in a way, to paying my bills not because I enjoy paying them, but because I perceive that it's it's this obstacle of paying the bills. There's kind of a reluctance to do it, but and a little bit of fear because I lose money. But I approach that voluntarily, and then I do it in a way that I feel will be the most beneficial to my life, and I get a little bit of that thrill and that dopamine. I do think that my nucleus reunion is. I don't know where my thalamus is, by the way. I'm just pointing up here, midline. It's probably like here or something. But I'll bet that my nucleus reunion is being activated because I feel a little bit of that fear, a little bit of excitement in paying those bills, and then it's tied to this redemptive arc. And so a lot of you, not a lot of you, maybe some of you are maybe skeptical, like, oh, is this just some kind of denial response or whatever? But I would say, I would use neuroscience to support my case that no, I think this is real. I think what I'm doing is I'm continually approaching dangerous or intimidating tasks or situations, and I'm tying them to a redemptive arc, which is a hero narrative for me. And as I continue to engage with that more, I'm flooded with amazing, amazing feelings. Dopamine, as we were capped, is kind of like the spice in Dune. It gives you superpowers. It allows you to do things that you couldn't otherwise normally do. Dopamine does three things. Remember this. Dopamine does three things. First of all, it prepares your brain for adopting new patterns. It's called neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is your ability to form new pathways, which is how you form new ideas or learn new techniques, new skills. So dopamine prepares your brain to absorb new information and to adopt it. So it's like a brain sculptor. It also provides neural energy. So the second thing is it gives neural energy. Dopamine is upstream of the production of adrenaline. So it's one of the ingredients that the brain uses to produce adrenaline, noradrenaline, which is basically this feeling of when you feel energetic, you have appropriate levels of adrenaline in your system. And dopamine gives you, this happens when you see something that you love, you get filled with excitement, right? That's dopamine being converted into adrenaline. So you're ready to learn, ready to gain new skills at a pace that you never could do before. You're filled with energy, so now you can actively and energetically, joyfully, you could say, pursue these new tasks. Which of course is a feedback loop, because as you acquire new skills that you feel further you towards that noble and intimidating aim, you get filled with more dopamine. And then dopamine also unlocks your overall physiology. I told a story about the two sets of nurses. They did this experiment. One set of nurses, they say, hey, I know you're not getting a lot of exercise outside of work, but your work is exercise. In fact, here, let me show you how beneficial your work is to your body. And now they have this vision of how their job benefits them, that it increases their health. The other nurses, they didn't tell anything. 6 to 12 months later, I can't remember however long, they did physicals on both of these nurses, measured all their vitals and everything, and they found that the nurses who had that vision of how their job benefits them, their bodies were in much better shape. They had much better results than the nurses, and they're doing the same exact thing. The difference was the dopamine. The dopamine prepares your physiology to benefit from everything good that you're doing. It's a receiver. It prepares you to receive. And if I may add, I think dopamine shapes reality. I really do. It just makes sense. I mean, if you receive this vision from on high, it's the highest vision that you can conceive of. Hopefully you can reach this destiny level of motivation. It gets released into your brain, and then it starts to shape and change who you are. It's like you're become possessed by this higher spirit. This higher energy envelops you. It's almost like Dragon Ball Z, where like, you get this Super Saiyan vibe, and you become like this different person. You are a new creation, and that's a thematic thing in Christianity. It's thematic in multiple, but you're a new creation in Christ. Like, this is demonstrated, and I think reality. It's able to shape reality. Things like The Secret or even quantum physics. It's like our brains change reality. Our attention is what changes. Like, we can't pay attention to something without changing it. I just think, I don't know, it probably shapes the world around you. And I think evidence of that is something called synchronicity, which is meaningful coincidences. So things that catch your attention, you go, oh, wow, that's just like, oh, that's so weird because I heard that here and I heard that here. So the way that you begin to find that secret motivation that only you have, but will have certain characteristics, you want to find the one that's most noble, that saves the world in some way, small or big. Maybe it's just you playing a beautiful piece of music. Maybe it's you doing a great job as a lawyer, or maybe you become a general in an army and you do actually save a bunch of people. The way you find that grandiose, intimidating goal is through, you can do it through smaller goals. So money could be one of those proxies where it's like, okay, this is the best thing I can think of. Maybe you're really far in debt, whatever it is, you pursue that money. That's fine. Hopefully that will lead you into higher and higher goals, because as you engage in mini loops, mini narratives, those flood your system with dopamine. Those release dopamine. Even just making your bed will release a little bit of dopamine, and that dopamine allows you to, right, it gives you a little bit of those superpowers. You can process information better. It says that you can plan into the future better. You can visualize things better. And so, like, that's why the whole cleaning your room thing is actually substantiated. That it's by design. This is how, by design, it's a momentum-based system. So we were designed to, our motivational system reward us for completing tasks that we perceive as beneficial. And so you could clean your room, wash the dishes, put plates into the cupboard because you've decided beforehand that plates should go there, and that'll give you these small dopamine hits which start to change who you are, and that broadens your vision. It's almost like the spice. You can see further now. So how you move into those higher narratives is you start with smaller narratives. Now, another thing you can do too is something called routines. Well, you know what routines are. What is a routine? Routine is something that you do that you know is beneficial, you plan it out beforehand, and that you do it every time. And so I'll pull up a couple quotes here. Take a look at these guys. So we talked about this, that don't worry about how hard something is. As you pursue something, all these things will be added to you. You're going to get what you need as you pursue this task. That's dopaminergically substantiated. That's just based on our physiology. We are designed to handle tasks that were more than we can handle now, because that gives a sense of fear. And as we approach that, we get the reward, we get huge dopamine hits, and now we transform. It's not the difficulty, right? It's the strength of your narrative. Focus on your narrative. And actually, the difficulty of the task, it's a little bit inverse. You want to make sure it's difficult enough. Like, you need it to be more difficult. The more difficult that you can conceive, the better. And then also, dopamine is released through the completion of mini tasks. And you could think of this as neural pathways. And the more you perform the same task over and over again, the strength of that neural connection increases. It becomes a more efficient pathway, so that you don't need as much activation energy to travel down that, to travel down that neural pathway that that completes the tasks at hand, like that motor pathway that allows you to complete a task. So routines, the routines are kind of like superhighways, dopamine superhighways, because you're paving this path in the woods. If you walk over it over again, eventually a path forms in the woods, and now you can walk down that path easily, and that path is beneficial to you. So now you're releasing dopamine. So it's kind of like it's not really a shortcut, but it is like, this is how the system was designed to establish routines that are beneficial, and that fills you with that good feeling, and that kind of sets you up for the day. It fills your day with dopamine, essentially. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the practical guide. I mean, so you have a sense of what your goal should be. You aim for difficulty. You want it to be difficult, because that will unlock the nucleus. The nucleus reunion, and that gives you that most pleasurable feeling, which fuels you to even do more. That's transformative, right? So you want a noble task, and you want one that's intimidating, that almost seems scary. So that's the shape. Now what that is for you is going to be different for different people. And then the way you continue to elevate that higher motivation is by working the small motivations. And that's the cleaning your room type stuff, the paying your bills, the getting to work on time, all those different things. If you can complete those loops well and try to tie those to higher and higher narratives, that's how you unlock who you are. You flood your system with dopamine, which unlocks hidden potential. The neuroplasticity, the neural energy, the physiology adaptation, all that stuff starts to happen with the dopamine. And that's the power of this hero story. Now, the hero story kind of gives you a shape of what that looks like, and we can talk about that next time. What is the shape of this hero's path? How does it actually look in practice? And also, there is a fractal aspect to the hero's path that we're constantly completing hero's paths as we do these micro narratives. So that's it. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed it.